Hey guys, it's Grilled Ash Ketchum here, and today we're going to be talking about a very interesting video, and that is the possibility of Ash and Gary actually being related. Now, to get some backstory on why this could possibly be true, we got to look at first Pallet Town itself. Pallet Town is a very small town with only a couple people. We only know that when Ash became a trainer, there was only 3 other trainers that got the other 3 starter Pokemon, one of which was Gary, and then 2 others that got the starter Pokemon before Ash because he woke up late and he had to end up with Pikachu. And from this, what we saw was that Ash's mom looked like she was, she was okay with her son leaving, but at the same time, she understood that her path was going to be much different with somebody leaving her house, another person leaving her household. We'll get into that later. But Professor Oak also seemed a little disappointed at first that Ash came a little late, but not extremely angry, and that's why he still granted him Pikachu. Now, the interesting part about that is we get to see later all the other people, not all the people specifically, we don't get to look at them in depthly, but the people that are from Pallet Town, and that is Ash's mom we get to see Professor Oak, Gary and Ash obviously, there's the other 2 trainers, and then only a couple other people, and we get to see them when Ash and Gary are being watched at home by everybody in Pallet when they're in the Pokemon League, the Indigo Pokemon League. And this is why it makes sense that Ash's father could have been related to Professor Oak, and Ash could be the grandson of Professor Oak, and that would make him and Gary related. Now we're going to get into that. As we see, Gary is treated very well by Professor Oak, and it seems that way because Gary actually doesn't have either one of his parents, and that's why he's being treated so well by Professor Oak. Yeah, we get to see that he's more well off, he's well off with the ladies, and he's just doing well, and he gets all undivided support from Professor Oak, as he has nobody else to really take care of him. And he's a little angry maybe because he doesn't have both his parents. Now, with Ash, we actually get to see his mom. Like we said, we don't get to, like we were told in the show, we don't get to see his father or grandfather because supposedly we were told that they both are on their own Pokemon adventure. But we do get to see his mom, who is very supportive of him, and she treats him kind of like a baby, and he gets embarrassed about it a lot. But what we get to see is that throughout the show, Professor Oak actually opens up to Ash a little more, and this is why he could possibly be his grandfather. Because we see that Ash's mom, since she just lost both her son and she lost her husband previously. Her son went on some adventure, and previously the husband, Ash's father, went on an adventure. And now she has Mr. Mime as a type of coping mechanism to deal with the fact that she doesn't have both her husband and her son. And I think this is why later Professor Oak actually opens up to Ash. Because what it seems like is Professor Oak was willing to become a very good grandfather for Gary because Gary didn't have either parent and he needed all of Professor Oak's support when Ash actually had his mom already. And the reason why Professor Oak later opened up to him is because he saw he was a good guy. Ash was a good guy. He cared about his Pokemon. He had a bunch of friends. He was a good kid overall. And because Ash's mom actually needed the support more than he did because her husband was gone and her son was gone now on an adventure. And this is where it makes sense because Professor Oak from then on, he knew the whole time that his son left Ash's mother, but he never really stepped in because he knew that they were doing fine before Ash left on his own. He knew that Ash's mother was doing fine and that Ash were doing fine as a family, and he never wanted to step in, and he never wanted to care for Ash. But once he saw that his mother was lonely and she needed Mr. Mime to step into their place, and he saw that Ash needed help because he was on the world on his own as a 10-year-old, Professor Oak actually stepped in and became a good grandfather figure to him. And it was too late for him to, the reason we never got to see him say, "Hey Ash, I'm your grandfather," is because it was 10 years too late. At this point, Professor Oak couldn't tell him, "Hey, I'm your grandfather." But as he saw that he was a good person, he began to have a relationship with him and support Ash and hold his Pokemon for him and always root for him, just like he rooted for Gary. And if you see later in the show, he doesn't pick sides over Gary and Ash, which should always also make sense why they are actually related, because he sees them as equal grandkids. And the other portion that makes sense about this is, as I said, we never get to see Ash's father, but it would make sense that Ash's father in this scenario would be the son of Professor Oak. But what we get to hear is that, as I said previously, Ash's father and grandfather went on their own Pokemon adventure, and if Professor Oak was originally from Pallet Town, it would make sense if he went full circle and he went on his own adventure, and he eventually came back to Pallet Town and retired there, taking care of new trainers and, you know, passing on the whole trainer legacy thing, like allowing new trainers to get into it, as he's a veteran trainer that at one point, you know, went around all these regions, and now he's helping out new people that wanted to go on the same adventure that he did at one point. And that's why it makes sense that Ash's mother is actually the daughter-in-law of Professor Oak, and Professor Oak is the father of Ash's father, and Ash is the grandson of Professor Oak, and then Gary would be the grandson, as we already know, of Professor Oak. So they would actually be related. And we're not really sure if Gary ever finds out that Ash is the grandson as well of Professor Oak, but, you know, this is interesting because it would make sense if they have somewhat of a rivalry, if they know that they're grandkids at one point, even though Ash doesn't know. Ash just sees it as, you know, competition. But Gary, that gives him more incentive to not like Ash or want to defeat Ash, because at this point he knows that he could lose his grandfather's attention to Ash. And that's basically the video, guys. Thanks for watching.